Hello and welcome to my channel. I'm Aura and today I'm going to show you how I painted this elephant in watercolors using a mix of warm and cool neutrals. For this painting I used Daniel Smith watercolors, Arches cold press paper, a Vinci Cosmotop, and a black velvet round size 8. I will list all of the supplies I used in the description below. For my reference photo, I'm using this image of this cute baby elephant that I found from pixabay.com. I will also link to that photo in the description. Before we get started, I wanted to tell you about my Mud No More Watercolors e-guide. If you struggle with getting vibrant colors, you just want to ensure you have color harmony in every painting, then go to my website at auralessonjack.com to get your free copy, or just click the link in the description below. And now on to the tutorial. I started by wetting the entire elephant using my large brush. I begin by adding brown ochre along the top of the head and ears, which is where some of the warmer tones are. In the deeper shadow areas, I am adding some sepia. And along the trunk and front of the face, I'm using neutral tint, which is cooler than the brown colors. At this stage, the colors are going to combine and mix, but this is okay because I will add more glazes later after this layer has dried. And then these later layers will help further define the cool and warm areas. The stretching job I did on the paper is not one of my best, and you can see the paint is just with a band of color to dry that way, so I will be tilting the paper and blotting up a bit with a clean, barely damp brush as I go for ultramarine in the cooler areas of the face and inner legs, and I continue to add neutral tint and some gold ochre while it's still wet. I'm loading my brush with watery pigment to flick around the elephant. I'm using the same colors that I used in the elephant so far. I'm also watering down some of the splotch with my brush to provide hard-edged and soft-edged background textures here. After the first layer dried, I'm re-wetting areas one by one to deepen the tones. I make sure to add water just to the ear next to the face without wetting the face so I can keep a hard edge that will keep it separate. I'm using burnt sienna on the top and French ultramarine below. I'm also going to be adding just a little bit of Quinacridone Violet just to brighten up all the neutral tones in the painting. Along the edge of the ear, I'm using neutral tint to paint in the little folds, and this paper is dry so I can keep the hard edge where I need it. The ears were honestly the most challenging part of this painting, and you'll see that I go back to them several times to try to make them look more realistic. Over some of those hard edges on the folds, I'm using a damp, clean brush to soften some of them, and using the other previous colors over the middle of the ear. While it's still wet, I use a paper towel to blot and lift some of that pigment to help create highlights. I start the other ear the same way by adding water along the inside and adding burnt sienna, French ultramarine, and neutral tint, and a little violet. I'm also adding the outer folds wet on dry again and blending out the edge of each shape while keeping a hard edge on the other side of the shape to look more like folds and ripples. Along this area, the paper is dry, and I'm adding in the little wrinkles and folds using some neutral tint. Back to the other ear, I am deepening the folds using a thicker mixture of neutral tint, some burnt sienna, and violet. and I do the same on the other ear. I'm deepening the shadows on the inside of the ears and adding burnt sienna along the folds of the back. Moving on to the face, I'm using neutral tint and French ultramarine to block in the shadow area. Add a little violet and some burnt sienna on top of the trunk and blot out a little bit more of a highlight. On to the rear leg, I'm using ultramarine, violet, and neutral tint on the inside and burnt sienna on the outside. The ear is dry, so I can make sure the paint doesn't run into that area. On the inner back leg, I'm using a thicker consistency of neutral tint. Once this is all dry, I can paint the front legs, and I begin with burnt sienna, then ultramarine, neutral tint, and violet, the same colors I have been using before. I'm also careful to keep some white areas at the front of the legs to give the impression of grass. Back to the head and ears, I'm deepening the warm and cool tones and adding a little more details to the ears and face. I'm using neutral tint to paint the eyes and wrinkles around the face. This is on dry paper. On the legs, a neutral tint for these deepest shadow areas, and another glaze of burnt sienna. When dry, I'm adding some subtle wrinkles to the legs. I'm careful to suggest the wrinkles without trying to paint every line I see, since I'm still trying to keep it a little loose and artistic. After the elephant is completely dry, just step back, and after pre-wetting carefully around the elephant, I dropped in some violet and then some. Down toward the grass, I used burnt sienna, and in the front of the elephant, some gold ochre. After it is dry, I went in again and added some neutral tint to help the elephant really stand out even more against the background. In the grass, I added more burnt sienna, brown ochre, and sepia. I used Newton white ink to paint in some of the highlights around the legs, in the grass, in the ears, and along the top of the head, and anywhere else I thought it needed a little bit more of a highlight. As a final touch, I go over some of those white grasses with some of that gold ochre, and just behind brown sepia. Thank you for watching this video. If you found it helpful, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel to get more art tutorials. Please click the notification bell to be notified when a new video comes out, and don't forget to download your free copy of the Mud No More Watercolor e-guide. If you have any questions about this video or about art in general, please leave a comment or question below. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.